take in relation to the environment. And we can encourage, support and collaborate with other people of faith and people of goodwill working for change. The rest of the environment movement takes heart from the fact that ARC exists. We are so welcome among that group and needed really, because just like Farmers for Climate Action are needed, and other, say, sports people, we're an important constituency and we need to stand up. So just some of the ways in which ARC has expressed those roles, I'll just run through fairly quickly. Can you just basically move reasonably quickly through those next bunch of slides? So we've had a divestment, not too quickly, had a divestment campaign, which went for about 3 years, and we still have a lot of material on divestment on our website. It's a very effective way. The divestment movement's been incredibly successful in Australia, and we've been behind the faith-based side of that. We've been part of Stop Adani campaigning. Next slide. Yeah, because that's been a very effective campaign in turning a whole lot of 95 companies so far have said publicly they won't do business with Adani, and Adani is becoming quite desperate. And that, you know, we do not want to see the Galilee Basin opened up. So I think that's been one of the more effective campaigns that we've been involved in. We use ritual, and here caroling to get behind that campaign. Just keep going. We have got behind the student climate strikers. So, and they've, you know, our people have been very keen to get behind the young people. And you know, we've harnessed a lot of sympathy for the young people. And that's been, I think, very encouraging to them. I think that's a role that Christians can play. The next few slides. We had a conference, an art conference, which I'd been resisting for a long time because I didn't want the footprint of people flying all over the place and coming to Canberra. But it was really very energizing, and it turns out to have been a very important event just to consolidate our identity and place in the climate movement, I think. We engage religious leaders in the work because very often they're so busy, they just do whatever comes to hand, and often other issues are seem so much more urgent than the climate issue. So we actually try and keep them on point. So we've had a number of open letters in the, you know, that's been published through the media, and then that amplified through social media. And we try and get as much coverage in religious media as we can. So each year we probably get into religious media one way or another, maybe 50 times, and thereby outreaching to people who may not usually have anything much to do with the climate movement. Often our name isn't there part of the articles. Very often it's just about the religious leaders standing up for something, or people of faith blockading, or whatever it is. If you could just keep going with those. So these are just examples. Oh yes, we do make the most of the fact that a lot of churches and faith communities have signs outside, or could have signs outside the place of worship. So we've had dozens of churches. We prompted dozens of churches to put signs out. Keep going. Yeah, you see a few of these signs. Now we've got these T-shirts. We never had T-shirts for a long time. We had these boutique T-shirts that Miriam made. There was only about 20 of them. That we didn't want to go into the commercial thing. We had too many scruples, but we let go of a few scruples, and now we've got hundreds of people around the country wearing "Killing the Planet is Against My Religion" and all that. It's just another way of getting word out. Now, officially, we don't have a lot to do with these kinds of protests. So, you know, this is a trusted audience, but unofficially we do. So this is a blockade in which John Brentnell, he's not here at the moment, but he's here, and he was one of the culprits, got himself into trouble. And let's keep going. We've had a number of blockading. There's John Brentnell there on your left. Yeah, and this is our most recent one up at the Galilee Basin, standing with the Wangan and Jagalingou people in this instance, and before we were standing with the Gomeroi. At the time, I just sort of felt, why are we always leaving these kinds of actions to our secular brothers and sisters, people who put themselves on the line, put their bodies on the line, and people of faith? Well, we don't want to get into trouble with the law. And at the same time, the companies are trampling the rights of Aboriginal people, opening up places for coal mining, which is going to destroy the planet, which is destroying the hope and future of our children and grandchildren. But no, we can't do something that might be arrestable. Well, that just didn't fit well with a lot of us, really. It didn't sit well with me. So we took that step, what was it, about 7 years ago? And we've quietly persisted. We don't do a lot of that work, but we do some. A lot of you are familiar with the Living the Change campaign. We try and promote the integrity of living simply in line with our religious values. We call it a living the change, but it's very appealing to conservative constituencies like the Islamic community here. Next one. We've been promoting eating less meat for a long time. We've got climate action kits. We have Switch to Solar, which encourages people to get their church to go to solar energy. Oh yeah, now this is our multi-faith day of action we had last Thursday, which a lot of Uniting Meredith participated, her community participated. Yours did too, see? And it did really energize people, I think, to be part of a global movement. So we had a lot of take-up. We had 136 events across this country. That's Pitt Street Uniting Church. I'm going to keep going with those. That one was a mixture of people from all different faiths on the steps of the South Australian Parliament. There are people up in Cairns, people up in Tin Can Bay. We had people in Tin Can Bay, I'm very proud to say. Next, yeah, Western Australia. That one's in Melbourne, in front of Josh Frydenberg's office. Okay, we'll stop there. Yeah, so 136 of these events with an average of about 20 people at each event. I mean, it was really a mobilisation. A lot of people that participated who hadn't been part of it before, and imams calling the azan, different parts of Victoria. We were very pleased. I mean, we didn't get a lot of media except local media and religious media. We were a bit slow in getting our videos out to TV. So we did end up on TV, Channel 7 in North Queensland, but yeah, we didn't manage to get TV. But still, in terms of reaching out to new communities and new constituencies, that was really effective, because the climate movement's always talking about, well, the bubble and only talking to our own people and not outreaching to new. And so I feel on that score, we did exceedingly well last Thursday and want to build on that. So that's a kind of covering quickly the sort of things that I think we've been moderately successful with. Now, our plans for this year are to empower local organisers to build engagement among their networks. So training people a bit in community organising. How do you get people involved? Then meeting with MPs, which we really should talk to Jane about, and we want to talk to Uniting, because there's a number of faith-based organisations that this year, with an election somewhere on the horizon, we have been doing that work for about a year. Various people meeting with particularly moderate coalition MPs, Labor, getting them to be more outspoken and shift their party towards a more robust stand in relation to climate action, because as you all know, Australia is somewhere at the bottom of the rung in terms of effective, legislation to cut emissions. So we've had some successes. I think we've got Trent Zimmerman more outspoken. And the big win, of course, is Warren Entsch, who's trying to push his party to at least accept net zero by 2050, and to do a lot more. That, in fact, he's pushing his party to accept the fact that renewable energy, low carbon technologies are job creators. He's written an article, he's written several articles in The Guardian. I mean, we've had a lot of pressure on Warren Entsch through a group in Cairns that's met with him maybe 6 times, putting and having, actions and statements, and they've been pretty full on. So I think you could say that we had a bit of a part in shifting him, I think. So I don't know, you don't know, but I'm optimistic that we have had an effect there. We want to increase the number of people who've signed on to the Sacred People, Sacred Earth statement. We want to make it a bigger, better day of action just before the climate negotiations in November. And we want to continue with the Stop Adani work and collaborate with others. Like there's an open letter coming out. No, not an open letter. It's a statement, I think, coming out that is going to be in a full page ad in probably The Age or the Sydney Morning Herald just before the Biden summit, which we're doing collaboratively with others in the climate. Collaborating with others in the climate movement, I think, is really important, because no one group is going to win this. It's only, Margaret Mead famously said, don't think that a small group can't change the world. Indeed, it's the only way the world has been changed. Well, and I used to believe that and keep thinking, why am I so disappointed? But actually now I think it's a whole lot of small groups getting together, working in collaboration, not in some kind of disjointed fashion with their own individual goals. And it's when we really let go a bit of our own autonomy and collaborate and work together with different organisations with all their different strengths and talents towards a very similar, towards a joint goal. That's when we'll make change happen. So that's some of why ARC works the way we do. Does anyone have questions briefly? Because I know there's built-in participation later on, but. Yeah, I think so. The question is around, has COVID perhaps shifted things and made things more possible? And I think a lot of people have suddenly stopped flying so much and made changes that they never before thought were possible. The government is spending in ways that they would have thought was anathema just even 2 years ago. So it's kind of shaken things up and made us think, well, hang on, the status quo isn't necessarily the way it has to be. So we do have choices here. So I think, yeah, I think it's been in some ways good. I know we're short on time.
It's just that the day is so packed and so minutely timetabled that it is important to keep moving so that we can fit everything in, including opportunity for discussion and feedback. One of the main things of the day is that each workshop is asked to feed back into the final plenary later on this afternoon. And we actually do need a spokesperson from each of the workshops. I don't know if any of you would be willing to be spokesperson for this workshop, but the idea is that after we hear Jane, then we break up into 2 or 3 small groups, including our online participants will have their breakout groups to discuss a few questions. Then each of the small groups has 2 minutes to feed back into the full workshop. Somebody takes a few notes on what our key findings, insights, the implications of those might be, and then we take that to this afternoon's plenary. There are 8 workshops, so if each of the 8 workshops contributes for 3 minutes, that takes up a good deal of, you see what I mean? It all builds up. So time is important, but that said, we need to be able to reflect, ask questions, discuss what we've heard. So keep that in mind, that after Jane speaks to us, we'll have some time for small group discussion, and that's quite generous. That's about half an hour. And then a time to distill some of that just amongst ourselves before we come up with, well, what is it we want to say to the rest of the conference in the plenary this afternoon. Introducing Jane. Sorry, thank you, Thea. Thank you so much for, it's really good to hear that we can, as people of faith, have a voice into this space, and that sense of what can one person do, what can one small group do. But when we get together, when we network, when we organize and collaborate, we can, well, our strength just increases exponentially when we work together. So it is so worthwhile that we have the voice in this huge issue, that we have the voice of people of faith being heard. Introducing Jane. Jane lives in Western Sydney, and family, husband and kids. Her time is currently shared between serving in her local community and with the Common Grace Creation and Climate Justice teams. Her studies include theology, ministry, ethics, legal studies. Jane is a passionate follower of Jesus, and her relationship with him is inherent in her response in the work that she does in pursuing kingdom justice for all. Her other passions are Australian music, the GWS Giants. I believe they throw a ball, kick at something. Yep, right, okay. That's introducing Jane, and we're looking forward to what she has to offer us.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me here. I would like to add my voice to acknowledging the traditional custodians of this land on which we gather, the Barramadigal people of the Darug Nation. They're the caretakers of this land on behalf of our Almighty Creator. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and I wish to extend that same respect to all First Nations peoples present. Sovereignty has never been ceded. This land always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Thank you for today's opportunity to come along and share with you about Common Grace's work in the area of creation and climate justice. I bring greetings from our CEO, Brooke Prentice. She's in Adelaide this weekend. Common Grace is a movement of people pursuing Jesus and justice. We are tens of thousands of Christians responding to the call to love our neighbour. We are a grassroots movement navigating the denominational, theological and political differences to come together for the common good, to discover common ground and to share common grace. Our shared goals are to listen to the stories of injustice, to equip individuals and communities, to mobilise Christians to undertake meaningful action towards bringing change. Ding. Oh, we've gone one, sorry. That's okay. That's good. Yep. Collectively, we're a movement of a movement raising a generous Christian voice in the public conversation. Common Grace's initiatives are recognised for creating space for national truth-telling, amplifying the voices of people living with injustice, and inviting people into relationship and to take action. Our initiatives include actions and events around Change the Heart, Aboriginal Sunday, Palm Sunday for Refugees, National Reconciliation Week, Refugee Week, NAIDOC Week, Season of Creation, and the UN's International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. Ding. Our movement has 4 key justice areas. Led by our Aboriginal Christian leaders, our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander justice is pursuing friendship and reconciliation in our lifetime. Our justice for people seeking asylum is pursuing a world where those who come to our shores seeking asylum and safety are welcomed with compassion. Our domestic and family violence justice is pursuing an end to the epidemic of violence against women and a place where churches and faith communities will be safe places for our victims. And our creation and climate justice team are pursuing a safe climate for all creation through the protection and restoration of God's beautiful earth. Common Grace's 4 key justice areas are not contained in independent silos, and through the lens of creation and climate justice, we can see how they are intrinsically linked. It is increasingly apparent that when it comes to climate change, that it is a threat multiplier. It hits the most vulnerable in our communities, both here and overseas, the hardest and first, while we who are well off are able to buffer those impacts. Common Grace recognises the need for creation and climate justice to be led by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and communities. As Common Grace's CEO, Aboriginal Christian leader and Uniting Church member Brooke Prentice says, for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, we cannot separate Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander justice from creation and climate justice. Through Brooke's relationship with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people across these lands now called Australia, Brooke tells stories of climate change impacts happening here, right now. From the Anangu people in the centre of Australia who now find it too hot to be able to perform their sacred ceremonies, which have happened continuously for thousands of years, to the Torres Strait Islander people who are seeing rising sea levels taking their homes and their tombs of their loved ones. And in the summer of 2019-2020, in New South Wales, we saw the bushfires incinerate Aboriginal sacred sites. These sacred sites had been there for over thousands of years. The impact of climate change also sees limited natural resources, such as drinking water, have become even scarcer in areas around this world. Crops and livestock struggle to survive where conditions have either become too hot and dry or unpredictable weather has seen too wet. With livelihoods threatened and food insecurity exacerbated, the UN predicts a significant increase in people seeking asylum due to the climate crisis. And for women and children and families who are experiencing the menace of domestic violence, climate change-induced crises have been shown to worsen the gender-based violence. Ding. Thank you. When faced with the enormity of this challenge, it can seem that the climate crisis is just utterly overwhelming. Yet as Christians, we know we have a creator God who is greater than this wicked problem of our own making, and he holds us and all of creation in his hand. Common Grace intentionally grounds all our work in pursuing a deeper understanding of the scriptural basis that informs and underpins our pursuit of justice. One of the reasons we believe people should join the Common Grace movement is that together we feel hope. Together we feel less tired and less alone. We find our hope in Jesus, and Common Grace intentionally creates space for Christians to seek him and join with fellow believers in his call for the pursuit of his kingdom. We invite you to join with Common Grace as we seek to be a gracious public Christian voice, both provocative and compassionate, and one that helps to reframe public attitudes towards Christianity. You can sign up at commongrace.org.au or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter with the handle @commongraceaus. So this is a point where you actually have permission to get your phones out and pretend that you're doing something else. Common Grace's creation and climate initiatives include our annual season of creation, which includes a full church resource toolkit, our annual online creation and climate justice prayer vigil, and our daily disruption series. These resources are all freely available on the Common Grace website. And these resources aren't just for those who passionately support creation and climate justice. It's also an opportunity for other Christians to hear and learn about why these key justice areas are central to kingdom justice, and to encourage our brothers and sisters to add their voice to the call for action. We are also part of CANA, the Climate Action Network of Australia, which ARC is also part of, and our members participate regularly in climate rallies and marches. And in the past year, we've submitted made two parliamentary submissions. One was to the COVID Senate Select Committee, and it heavily featured creation and climate justice. And the second was a parliamentary inquiry for the climate change bill. And into the future, we think that this may be a good place for the Uniting Church to work alongside us on future submissions. Ding. And it's from this collaborative space that in 2020, Common Grace partnered with Tearfund Australia for Christians Together for Climate. Why did we choose this campaign? The focus of this campaign is our federal leaders. I'm sure I don't have to go over the fraught history between climate change and our federal government. It's been a key component in the toppling of almost every Prime Minister from Kevin Rudd the first time round through to Malcolm Turnbull. And some would argue that Labor's bold agenda in tackling climate change at the 2019 election was the reason they lost what was seen as the unlosable election. Through these years, many organisations working in the arena of climate change advocacy have actually withdrawn from engaging with the federal government and have chosen to rather work with local, state and territory governments. And this has definitely achieved results, with every state and territory signing on to net zero by 2050, and a lot of states taking real and credible action towards reducing their emissions by 2030. However, this has left an advocacy vacuum at the federal level. Internationally, the climate conversation has dramatically shifted in the past few months with the election of the Biden-Harris administration in the US, China talking about reaching net zero by 2060, and new trade deals with the EU and the United Kingdom indicating that there will both have tariffs for heavy carbon emitters. And quite frankly, Australia looks like it will be rapidly left behind. With Biden's climate summit in April, likely to see the US strengthen its carbon reduction commitments, and COP26 in Glasgow in November, requiring countries to set out more ambitious targets for reducing emissions by 2030, there is increasing international pressure on the Australian government. The goal of Christians Together for Climate is to add a Christian voice to the national conversation. We believe that climate action is electorally significant, and it is because it is important to demonstrate that there is climate change action there's a movement from within Middle Australia. However, there are a number of internal dynamics within the coalition around acting on the climate crisis, and also within Labor after their 2019 election loss. Unfortunately, the additional debt burden from responding to the COVID-19 pandemic and policies focused on fast economic stimulus are likely to see our government move towards coal and gas as the answer. As Christians, we are an unusual voice in this arena, and we are valuable to all sides of politics. If well mobilised, we are enough of the constituency to be of political value. The coalition sees themselves as the natural home of the Christian vote and increasingly hostile to the noisy Australians who they see as being on the left wing of politics. The Labor Party is struggling to connect with Christian voters. However, climate change action is a possible point of values alignment. Labor is also considering whether or not to walk away from some of their climate change policy commitments in order to recover the ground in their regional coal electorates. So to show that there's still a potentially swinging constituency out there that is committed to climate action is important. Our Christians Together for Climate campaign is non-partisan and non-denominational, and it brings a respectful, solutions-focused voice to the exchange. We believe that these are our strengths. Christians have the potential for enormous impact as unlikely messengers advocating to our political leaders for urgent action on climate change. This last year has given us time as individuals, communities, and churches to slow down, reflect, and to change our behaviour. COVID-19 pandemic has also shown us that we can pivot rapidly when we need to. Our current response by our leaders to COVID-19 is a sign of hope that focused leadership and change is possible in this arena too. We want to take this moment in time to urge our politicians to make the most of this once-in-a-generation opportunity to reshape our future and to build a better world for everyone. So what are the details of this campaign? Ding. Our main policy goal is to add our voices as Christians with others in the climate action movement to see federal political support make the transformational shifts required to meet and reach our Paris Agreement's commitments through the establishment of a bold and credible national climate plan. Our movement goal is to demonstrate ahead of the next federal election, either later this year or in the first half of next year, through strategic local engagement and meetings with our MPs and senators, that ordinary, everyday Australian Christians care about tackling the climate crisis. So how do we plan to do this? Ding. We are establishing grassroots groups in key electorates. The purpose of these groups is to be the evidence that a call for climate action is now shifting from a fringe issue into the mainstream for Christians. Through events and activities such as climate lament services, morning tea events, letter and postcard writings and surveys, our groups are raising awareness within their communities and then reporting this increasing awareness and concern to their elected officials through MP meetings. Common Grace and Tear Fund are supporting these groups and individuals through providing training in grassroots lobbying and political engagement, ongoing support and coaching from our Tear Fund and Common Grace teams, access to resources and learning opportunities from the ideas that connect Christians to their communities to templates for how to conduct a meeting with their MP or senator. Our campaign also provides connection with other grassroots campaigners right across these lands we now call Australia. Ding. Sorry. Disappeared. Thank you. We have selected 26 key electorates across the nation, and although we've not limited it to just these electorates, if we have Christians who are passionate about this and want to get involved, we are creating other groups. MPs and senators are selected in key electorates, and they fall into one of these categories. They're either decision makers or leaders, or politicians who hold a relevant portfolio, where their seats are at risk to the Greens, their influence is in a party or members of a relevant parliamentary committee, or their marginal Liberal seats. We currently in New South Wales, have 7 established grassroots groups. They have held community events and are currently approaching their MPs or senators requesting to hold a meeting, hopefully in April. We have a further 6 electorates where we are in New South Wales, where we're establishing groups. We do have other grassroots groups from across the nation. So for those of you who are joining us online and may not live in New South Wales, contact me because I'd love to chat about these groups. Or if you know someone else who might be interested in this. Ding. The best place to start for more information is the Common Grace website. And on their homepage is a link to Christians Together for Climate, or you can email me at jane@commongrace.org.au. Ding. Our Knit for Climate Action has taken the unusual Christian voice as climate advocates to a whole new level. In the second half of 2020, we put out the call to knitters to use their creative skills to make a hauntingly beautiful artwork in the form of a scarf. This scarf's pattern is based on Professor Ed Hawkins' Show Your Stripes and represents the average global temperature across 101 years. I'll put it on. It uses Dr. Mick Pope's temperature data from 1919 to 2019. Each temperature is assigned a different colour, and the blues signify the below average temperatures and the reds signify the above average temperatures. Each colour is then knitted in each year, is knitted in. When we launched the campaign, we hoped that 101 knitters would sign up. We were overwhelmed with over 600 responses of knitters who have heard the call, and we have already received 130 completed scarves. It's not too late to become involved in this campaign, so please go to commongrace.org.au, and on the homepage there's also a link to this campaign where you can find more information about the handbook. We're currently designing plans around this campaign to see these scarves delivered to our federal politicians, and we've actually started to plan out to extend this campaign further than that. So watch this space. Ding. Thank you once again for the opportunity to share with some of Common Grace's current creation and climate justice actions. I just want to mention this coming Monday, we're hosting the online prayer vigil for creation and climate justice. Miriam and I have been, and a team have been working hard to bring that together. Again, if you would like to sign up, commongrace.org.au, and on the front homepage, there's a link to signing up for that prayer vigil. It's a 1-hour prayer vigil, all online. As I've mentioned, that the reasons for joining Common Grace Movement is that together we feel hope, together we feel less tired and less alone. I leave you with an invitation to join with us so that you can receive regular information about our activities, or you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, again with a handle @CommonGraceAUS. Thanks.